Man follows me through 6 train stops and then tries to follow me home. This happened just yesterday. To be honest, although I read this subreddit to creep myself out, I'm not really posting this for you guys to read. I'm posting it because I need to talk about it even if no one's listening. Because I'm still scared and I need to let it out. And I thought this would be an appropriate place to do so. I know that I probably could have handled this better, that there were things that I should and shouldn't have done. But I don't really want to hear about it. I already got some of that from my mom. It doesn't matter what I should have done because it's already happened. I'm posting because I need an outlet to express how I feel. I'm a very small, weak woman, 5'6" and 118 pounds. I'm a university student who lives with my mom. I take my city's subway system to and from school, and I've never had any problems with it before. On Mondays and Wednesdays, I have a class that ends at 7:15 p.m. I've never been concerned about it because the route from my classroom to the train station goes through a segment of downtown that's filled with high-class hotels, so it's very well lit and there's always police around. Not to mention that a lot of my classmates also ride the train and take the same route. But yesterday, I had to go to the bathroom after class, so by the time I got to the train station, all of my classmates had already left on their own trains. Part of me thinks that if I had just held it, my night would have gone so much better. I got to the train station and sat down on a bench to wait. I have these huge over-ear Bluetooth headphones, the kind that are also an accessory. Yesterday, I was just using them as earmuffs. I didn't have any music playing, but these are quality headphones, so outside sound is still pretty muffled, even with them off. So I was sitting there with my headphones on, playing Pokemon on my 3DS, with a bald man at the other end of the bench. Some guy walks up and wants to sit between us, so I scoot over without being asked because that's just what you do. New guy starts talking to bald guy. I can't hear what they're saying because of the headphones. The new guy turns and gives me this friendly pat on the back and says something to me. I pulled my headphones off one ear because I thought he wanted something. This guy just kind of babbles at me. I couldn't really understand what he was saying because I don't hear very well in the first place. Not enough to need aids, but enough that I talk loudly and a normal speaking voice sounds quiet to me. My standard thing for when this happens is to ask them to repeat themselves or just kind of smile and nod, which is what I did. Then he finally speaks up more and asks my name, holds out his hand to shake. I say my name and go to shake his hand. Instead of shaking it, he pulls it up and kisses the back. That was when I knew that things weren't right. He starts asking me about myself. First about how old I am, then if I drink alcohol, then about my game and the progress Nintendo has made since putting it out, the old game. He goes on about alcohol for a while, asking how much I drink and talking about how much he drinks. The whole time, he's sitting so close and leaning over me, speaking very fast and in something between a mumble and a normal speaking voice. I was really uncomfortable, and over this guy's head, I was giving panic looks at bald guy. I know he saw those looks. He would meet my eyes and then look away. Creepy guy asks me more stuff about what train stop I go to and where I live, which I avoid answering. He mentions that he needs to get off one stop after Uptown Station, which is the station I needed to get off at. For info, we were at Downtown Station. I live along the train line and you can see my condo from Uptown Station. Like literally, it's at the end of the road that Uptown Station is on in a T formation. Between Downtown Station and Uptown Station, there are 5 other stations. My train comes and I quickly go, "Well, this is my train, bye sir," and get the hell away from him and onto the train. I remember fervently hoping he wouldn't follow me. He didn't follow at first, so I didn't think he would be getting on the train. So I sat down in a completely empty seat and put my bag on the seat next to me. The train has benches with 2 seats on each bench. If I had known that he would be getting on the train, I would have sat down next to one of the women on there and pretended that I knew her. Creepy guy got on right before the train left. Before he did, bald guy who sat down in front of me smiled at me and said, "Don't worry, he's a weirdo, but he's harmless." I cannot tell you how pissed off I am at this fuckhead. Creepy guy may have been harmless to him, but I was terrified and looked to him for help multiple times through the train ride. And this bald-headed fuckwit would look at me in the eye, acknowledge my fear, and then look away and make conversation with other men on the train. Fuck this guy. I hope he trips and falls face first into a cactus. Now, this next part I don't really have an explanation for. I know that this was dumb, but it's like I froze up and my southern bred manners kicked in. The guy came onto the train and started looking around for me. I froze and thought, oh shit. He spotted me, walked up and said, "Katorian, can I sit next to you?" I wanted to say no so badly, but I couldn't speak and my body just went into autopilot and moved my bag off the seat and onto my lap. I was trapped between him and the wall of the train. His entire body was just pressed up against me. There wasn't an inch of him that wasn't pressed against my side. I was kind of frozen, facing straight forward and staring at my game. When he talked, he did it with our cheeks only an inch apart. He started mumbling and chattering at me again. I could barely understand him. He asked me about my game again, then got into weirder topics. He asked me if I listened to rap music, then congratulated me for saying no. Asked if I dated black guys, if I had a boyfriend, if I had a girlfriend. He asked if I lived alone, where I lived. I lied, obviously. As we got closer and closer to my stop, I got more and more scared. I was so scared he was going to follow me home. It's a straight shot from the station to my condo. You literally can't miss it. I was giving panic eyes to everyone in there, men, women out the window, anyone who would look at me. They all looked away, and creepy guy saw me give the looks multiple times. It's just kind of confirmation to me that he had bad intentions. If a normal, albeit weird guy was trying to make conversation with a girl, saw her making panic eyes to people, they would realize something was up and they were being creepy. But this guy just didn't give a damn. I don't know how I can properly express how terrified I was. Guys, it all looked so clinical and factual written down, but this felt like life and death to me. He pulled dozens of folded up papers out of his pocket and started sorting through them. He picked one and started writing on it, all the while mumble chattering about racist Chinese ladies and racist bald guy. Meanwhile, my stop was coming up and I was still panicking. My stop comes up and I stand up. He had his legs up so I couldn't get out. I very forcefully said, "Sir, this is my stop, I need to go." And he scrambles up out of my way. A billion more papers, a folded up notebook, and an unopened condom packet fell out of his pockets. I get to the door, the train comes to a stop, and my fears are proven true. He gathers up all his stuff and follows me out. Remember that he said the stop he needed was the one after the stop I get off at? I managed to text one-handed in my pocket and send, "Help, man, follow, Uptown Station," to my mom. She doesn't reply. I managed to turn on my headphones and connect them to my phone. Again, one-handed in my pocket and call her. She doesn't reply. I'm nearly hyperventilating. I try to move fast enough to lose this guy since he's dropping his collection of stuff everywhere, but he gets himself organized and catches up to me before I reach the escalators. I've been continually calling my mom this whole time. Creepy guy follows me up the escalator and out the gates. At this point, I stop. There was no way in hell I was going to go home and show this guy where I lived. He asked me which way I was going next. I sort of lied and said I was waiting for my mom to come pick me up. He said that he would wait with me. I tried to convince him that it would be okay for him to leave, and he insisted on staying. At this point, I pulled out my phone and was calling my mom publicly. He leans in super close again and goes, "Oh, Penny Katurain, I know her, good-looking lady, and starts going on about how he knows my mom and how pretty and nice she is, which is fucking bullshit. My mom is a high-class accountant who works for a massive scholarly organization, and this guy is certainly not the type of person she comes in contact with. I give up on calling my mom. He gives the paper he had been writing on. It had, assuming it was real, his full name, email address, and 2 phone numbers. He kept saying to call him if I wanted a job. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Then he pulls out another paper and pen. He hands it to me. He asks for my full name, email, and phone number. I gave him a fake number and handed it back. He said, "No, your full name too." I told him, "Oh no, I'm sorry, sir. My mama wouldn't be very happy if I gave that out." He starts trying to convince me that it would be okay. At this point, I panic and shove the paper with the fake number at him and say, "I'm sorry, sir, I have to go." And I literally just run the fuck away, down the stairs to the street. My mom finally calls me back. Her phone had been on silent. I was terrified and kept looking behind me to see if he was following me, because he had started to when I started to run. Mom leaves the condo and runs toward the station, and we met in the middle. I've never been so relieved to see my mom. She brought me home and kept an eye out over our shoulders for the guy. I still have the papers with his supposed full name and contact info. I just feel like I needed to share this story because I'm still scared. I had to go back to both those stations today and was terrified he would still be there. I was in fight or flight the whole walk to the station. He was a black guy wearing a baseball cap, and I feel terrible about this, but anytime I saw a black guy wearing any kind of hat, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Thank God that wore off by the time I got to my class, but I'm still scared I'm going to encounter him again. I'm still on campus. I'm going to have to go back to those stations again today, and I'm so anxious that he'll be there. I just felt like I needed to talk about it so I wouldn't be so scared anymore, you know? A wild psychopath has appeared. First off, I'm a 25-year-old female. I was driving around town the other day playing Pokemon Go. Yes, I was driving and playing. The Pokestops in my small town are too far apart to walk. Sue me. I like to think I have at least somewhat a brain though, so I do pull over every time something pops up or when I hit the stops. Anyway, I had been doing this for an hour or so and was heading down the street for another loop when I heard screaming from behind me. I looked around and see a man a few blocks back walking down the street. He wasn't just walking, he was power walking with a purpose, taking long strides, swinging his arms and leaning forward. He was also the one screaming at the top of his lungs, loudly enough that I could hear him several blocks away with my windows shut and my radio on. There was no one else around. I was a little weirded out, but I wasn't gonna let some random crazy stop me from catching them all. I was downtown and it was broad daylight, so I just continued on to the next stop and pulled over again. This time, I did park on the opposite side of the street that the man was coming down though. Several Pokemon popped up in the same area, and one of them was particularly stubborn. I think it was a Squirtle if anyone cares, so I ended up sitting there for several minutes. During this time, the man walked past me on the other side of the street, still screaming. He didn't take any notice of me. I tried to understand what he was screaming about, but it was just random nonsense. I only made out a few words, and there was something about a dragon mixed in with a lot of gibberish. Anyway, I moved on and passed him before pulling over again. This time, he did notice me. I assume he saw me with my phone and thought I was calling the police or something, because his screaming intensified and came closer. When I looked up, he was making a beeline across the street and straight for my car. The spot I had pulled into was on the right-hand side of the street and between two other cars, so because he was approaching my driver's window from the street, he was blocking me in. I couldn't pull back out without hitting him. Trust me, I thought about doing it, so I was trapped with this lunatic who started pounding on my window. His fists were filthy and bloody, and every hit left brownish red smears on the glass. At this point, his screaming became a little more coherent, and I managed to understand that he was screaming about my phone, and that he wasn't going to let me send him back. I was nearly in tears at this point, and I tried to explain to him that I wasn't calling anyone. I was just playing a game, but he was clearly beyond reasoning with. If anything, he just became even more furious. I did the only thing I could think to do and showed him the screen where I had been trying to catch a Charizard before he'd interrupted me. He suddenly got a look of terror on his face. His eyes looked like they were going to pop out of his skull, and he immediately stopped pounding on the window mid-swing. He nearly fell over backwards and got hit by another car as he leaped away from the car into the street and ran the opposite direction, screaming, "Dragon!" I watched him go and then sat there absolutely stunned at what had just happened, with tears rolling down my face for several minutes before I was able to calm myself down enough to think again. At this point, I didn't even care about the game anymore. I just wanted to go home. Once I got there, I realized the Charizard, who had literally saved my life, was still on my phone. I caught him and of course named him Dragon. What turned me into a berserker? I'm a 28-year-old female from Germany, so I apologize for any bad spelling here, for this is not my native tongue. Northern Germany is a safe place to raise your kids. Murders, kidnappings, shootings, etc. are not common here, not even in the cities. I'm not a girly type. Actually, I do not seem very feminine. Short hair, hoodie, shorts, and piercings, no makeup. It's just not my thing. And I consider myself rather tough. I know I have strong fists, despite my MS. Normally I avoid stress and hate getting into fights. My friends call me a goofy and gentle softie. It does take some serious stuff to make me angry, but there's one thing that changes me from a doe to a female grizzly with cubs. When I think about what happened several weeks ago, my whole body is shaking. I made a new friend on Saturday. Let's just call him Andrew. Speaking of cubs, Andrew is 10 years old. Nice boy. I came to know him while playing the new Pokemon Go game. We had a lot of fun. My battery went low after 2 hours, so we parted ways. I went on catching tours every day since I got the new app. Before that, I rarely left the house. Back then, I didn't know why, but I had to think of my meeting with Andrew. I guessed I was just curious when I would see him again on my tours. So this one Friday, I decided to do a second run through my neighborhood. It was about 8 p.m. or so. Just hitting some Pokestops and go home after, I told myself, and left the house. As I turned around a corner, not 500 meters away from the place where Andrew and I met, I saw him. I smiled to myself and went down the same route as he, to surprise him or something like that. After some steps, I saw a hooded guy peeking out of a side street behind the kid a few times. I kept going and watched. My smile turned upside down when I realized that he was watching the child. My inner alarm went off when the guy started to follow Andrew in a careful but steady pace. Stopped whenever the kid stopped, etc. A part of me still couldn't believe that this could get serious. We are in Germany after all, so I just followed them at first. Andrew didn't seem to notice this guy. Both didn't notice me either. At this point, the man quickened his pace to catch up with Andrew. He grabbed him by the arm and put his hand over his mouth to shut down his screams. He was dragging him towards some bushes. I froze, my heart dropping. Then I ran like hell to them, dropping my phone. I started to roar swearings as loud as I could. The guy turned around, startled. I don't know how my ill body managed it, but as soon as I got close enough, I literally lost it. I tore Andrew away, too harsh. Sorry, buddy. He fell to the ground, and I hurled at this creature. He was bigger than I, maybe in his mid-30s. I never had felt this kind of adrenaline in my whole life. I was scared like hell, but my fury was worse. I screamed, "Call the police!" several times, hoping someone would hear me. He seemed like he had seen a gym once in a while. I didn't care. I somehow got him off his feet by pushing him and punching his nose bloody. I have no idea how I did that. Maybe he just didn't expect a smaller woman could do that. I kicked the shit out of him while he was on the ground, screaming until my strength left me. When he got back to his feet, he glared at me, growling stuff like "stupid cunt" and "you'll regret this," and drew some kind of hunting knife, a large one. I thought he'd come right for me. I thought he'd stab me. I really thought I'm going to die there, but I didn't move. I just stared at him and kept on screaming at him. Suddenly he bolted when some residents came out of their houses. I dropped to the ground. I wanted to chase after him, but my condition was not allowing any actions. I just sat there, shaking. I started to cry, looked around if I could spot Andrew. He had gotten away and watched from a safe distance, clearly in shock as I was. When the police came, we all told them what had happened. I gave Andrew my contacts so we could keep in touch. The police drove Andrew home and he insisted to let me come. The whole way, he didn't let go of me and cried so hard I could hardly fight my own tears back. His parents thanked me 1,000 times for saving their child. The police called me the next day to invite me to do a full report. They informed me that this bastard is wanted for several sexual assaults on young women and children. He even is still on the run. Thanks for this stupid app to exist. I don't dare to imagine what would have happened if I didn't go out a second time that day. My phone didn't survive the fall, but I'm so glad Andrew is still healthy and safe around his family. I'd break 1,000 smartphones to defend a child from danger. And to all the pedophiles out there, pray we'll never meet, because I'll rip your dicks off with a rusty wire and feed it to the street rats. Too close to home. So, I'll put this into perspective here. This happened a couple years ago, 2016, when Pokemon Go was still all the craze, and it was common to see other people walking around strange areas playing it. I myself went out at strange hours looking for Pokemon myself and never really considered my surroundings very much. I learned pretty fast it only takes one time for something to happen, even in a decent neighborhood where I lived. Anyway, my cousin was down for a few weeks that summer, which typically happened every year. He also happened to be into the game. We both spent many hours of the night going out into the night and searching for good stuff. As you can imagine, we never really thought anything of it. That, however, changed very quickly one night around 11 p.m. Despite what I previously said about not thinking anything of going out around midnight, I'm usually pretty cautious. This, however, was a feeling I had been taking on. It began with some sort of rare Pokemon that came up on our nearby map. I told my cousin, and naturally he was intrigued as well. We were in my room, and I told him I'd go outside and look for it, so he told me that he would be out in a couple minutes. We lived in villas on the corner of 2 streets, both fairly nice places, but very poorly lit, and many trees to the back of the villas. My patio had a gate that led to our driveway. Anyway, as I walked out, I turned to the right, heading east, down the dead-end road I was walking. Face glued to the phone, but to no avail. I elected to turn the corner down the other street. It was much darker. There was no moonlight and cloud cover that night too, so it didn't help the situation. I had only been out for 10 minutes or so, down that road, and was on my way back. For some reason I can't explain, I lifted my head out of the game to see someone standing behind me. At this point, though, I didn't realize the true potential for danger I was in. It was dark, real dark. He was dressed in black from head to toe, and I could not make out a face due to him having a hoodie pulled over. Keep in mind it's summer, so, although dark out, it's in Florida and very warm. This still didn't register though, because I thought it was my cousin that was supposed to come out. Had a phone in his hand, but the brightness was dim to the point I couldn't make detail out. Since I assumed it was my cousin at the time, I called out to him. "Brandon, did you find it yet?" No answer. "Hey, you haven't walked far enough, keep going," I said as I stepped closer. But something didn't feel right. As I called, the figure looked up, but no answer. Strange, isn't it? I knew it wasn't Brandon at this point. I felt increasingly uncomfortable, as I'd expect a normal person to say something along my lines of, "You got the wrong person," or, "What? Who are you?" The figure looked up as I called, but with no answer. He had been facing me, standing still the entire time. I began to wonder how long he'd been begging me. I called one more time. "Brandon, is that you?" This was to no avail. My chest tightened and I felt my body tense. After that last call, he began to walk towards me. Beginning with a normal pace but rapidly picking up pace, I turned and began a speed walk. As I picked up space, so did he. By this time, his phone was off and it seemed all attention was aimed at me. Well, my walk rapidly turned into a sprint. I could hear the heavy footsteps gaining on me. By this time, I was nearing the corner I lived on. I ran as fast as I could, scared to death I'd fall, so his presence became ever closer. When I turned the corner, I frantically ripped the gate open, not ever allowing time to close it as I dashed to the door. Luckily, it was still unlocked, and in that small frame of time, I could sense him right at the gate before the patio as I quickly bolted through the entrance and locked every lock on the door. Although I knew it was, I still held hope it was my cousin pranking me, so I nervously walked into my room to see if he was there. Sure enough, he was. I was so terrified I could barely get wording out. Eventually, I gave him my account, and being right by a window, we had trouble sleeping that night. From that day till I moved, I never went out late in my neighborhood again. We still often wonder who that was, or what he could have done, but these are things I may take comfort in never knowing. So, mysterious hooded man, let's not meet again.